Albanian. I have written that. Uh, it's a great honor and privilege to have a conversation with you, Doctor. You are a renowned scholar, author, speaker, and one of the best experts on China. You have taken stand for Uyghur Muslims as a student of history and political institution. And being a Muslim, I must appreciate you. You are an epitome of knowledge. One can learn a lot from you. So, you know, I have read your interviews. My first question to you is, as an Albanian historian, what's your interest in China? What drew you to study the Xinjiang Uyghur issue?
Well, I am a Muslim, apart from being a historian, and seeing and observing different articles about the situation of Muslims in China, in particular with Xinjiang. I had a particular interest to learn exactly what is going on. And we historians, we have a rule, the professional historians, I mean, when we want to authenticate something, we have to go to the source. So when you get news from secondary or third sources, they're not as reliable as when you go and touch them yourself. Allah shows to us Muslims in Surah Al-Hujurat, He tells us in the Quran that when we want to judge some people, we have to make sure about what we are uh, saying or thinking about them before we can come into a conclusion. This is a Quranic order. And for this reason, in July of 2019, I approached the Chinese embassy in Tirana, Albania. And I told to our Chinese friends, I showed them my profile. And moreover, I'm critical to US imperialism. And I told to our Chinese friends that I was doubting the stories that were coming from Western media outlets about the situation of Muslims in Xinjiang. So I went to the Chinese embassy with a good intention. I told them I want to visit Xinjiang myself, to touch the reality on the ground myself. And after my visit, I'm going to produce articles and probably even a documentary about what is going on with the Muslims of Xinjiang. So the reason that pushed me to go and investigate the situation of Uyghurs in Xinjiang was in a way very naive but honest as well. I was thinking that Western medias are lying. On the other hand, I was thinking that there was a sinister attack against China in order to delegitimize its relations with the world and in particular with the Muslim world. So this was the reason why I approached the Chinese embassy in Tirana
Right.
last year. And after presenting myself to our Chinese friends here, a few days later, they invited me to take part in an official journalistic tour, which was sponsored by State Consul Information Office of China and Xinjiang. And with their invitation, I joined a group of around 20 foreign journalists who visited Xinjiang between August 16.
How many journalists? 24.
About 20.
About 20.
Yeah, 19, something around 19.
Around 90. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Now, Doctor, you have visited to Chinese education centers. initially to expose Western propaganda, but you came out exposing the concentration camps. Why? And how did you manage to reach there? Because this is, to reach in concentration camps is in a dictator state. It's not a normal thing.
Yeah, part of the trip that the Chinese government uh, invited us was for us to visit the re-education centers of China, or what China calls vocational training centers, but we in the West call them concentration camps.
Hmm.
So the question, how did I manage to reach there? Simple. I was invited by our Chinese friends. I was a trusted journalist on their part, and my good intentions were to support China. So this is the way how I managed to enter in two vocational training centers. One was in the city of Aksu, or in the county of Aksu. Another one was in Kashgar.
Oh. Oh, what was the condition of the youth in the concentration camps?
Well, our visit to these concentration camps was the breaking point that I had with China, but even other journalists who were with us.
Hmm.
We had two Indian journalists, we had a Turkish journalist, we had two Afghans, one Bangladeshi, one Pakistani, and around five who were from Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. When you go to Xinjiang and you see the region from the street and from outside, things look very perfect. You see massive development, you see people working. So the image that you get is very deceptive. But what happens is
Right.
that when you go into the life of Uyghurs, or moreover with our story, when you visit these concentration camps, you understand that you are coming into an apartheid regime. What China is doing with the Uyghur Muslims of Xinjiang is even worse than what
Hmm.
Israel does to Palestinians, or what India does to Kashmiris. In Kashmir, as far as I know, you don't have concentration camps. You are allowed to pray to Allah in your mosques. Of course, you have police and state violence time after time, but the situation in Xinjiang was much more horrible.
Hmm.
In these so-called vocational training centers, what we found out was that Chinese authorities were taking from the streets every Uyghur or other Turkic Muslim who had a religious identity. For example, your name is Nadir Ali, you have a beard. If you have to live in Xinjiang, you will not be free talking to me right now. You
Hmm.
won't have anyway access to Skype or to WhatsApp or to other means of communications that we have. Because in China, everything is banned. You have only WeChat and Chinese apps. Moreover, your communications are monitored by the police 24
Hmm.
hours a day. And moreover, if the Chinese see a person like you who has a Muslim name, Nadir Ali, and who has a beard, you will immediately be detained, be sent to this concentration camp, where they're going to shave you, they're going to force you to renounce your religion and identity. They will probably force you to eat pork. They will
Oh.
prohibit you from praying to Allah. They will force you to shout many times per day, long live Xi Jinping and long live the Communist Party of China. And moreover, they will force you to not speak your native language, but they will force you to speak Chinese.
Mhm.
This is what they were doing to the Uyghurs that we visited in these concentration camps. And by the way, they're not all Uyghurs. Uh, China goes against every Muslim who lives in Xinjiang.
Mhm.
Xinjiang, like Kashmir, is a Muslim majority region. Xinjiang is an occupied territory which before had its own empires and history. The situation is very similar with Kashmir in India, which was annexed by India. But the policies of assimilation that the Chinese are doing against the Muslims of East Turkestan are far worse than the policies of India in Kashmir. Uh, what the Chinese are doing is that they're trying to forcefully assimilate, or better said, mass assimilate the Muslims of Xinjiang, who are of Uyghur, Kazakh, Kyrgyz, Tatar, and other Turkmen origin. The thing that unites these people together is their Turkic language and Islam. These people are the natives of Xinjiang. But what China is doing, it has built these massive concentration camps where it is taking people who have Muslim identity from the streets, sending them in these centers and forcing them to be kafirs.
Mm.
When I was in Xinjiang, we had two Indian journalists. They were from Delhi, and they were Hindus. And when they saw what China was doing, they started, one of them, she was a very nice lady, she started crying and told me, Olsi, even the most right-wing Hindus that we have in our country do not even dream of doing what China is doing to Muslims of Xinjiang. So what China is doing in these concentration camps, it is taking Muslims from the streets, sending them in these camps, and forcing them to renounce Islam and their Turkic identity. So this is a cultural genocide.
Oh, here I have a question. Are you suggesting these youths are brought in here for brainwashing to impose ideology by the state?
Yes, they're being brainwashed and they're forcefully Sinified. Can you imagine, let us say, if Xinjiang, or let us say, if India was to invade a Chinese province, and when Indian troops who have gone to China would take Chinese youths from the street, put them in concentration camps, and force them to speak Hindi and be Hindus. This will be outright fascism. This is exactly what China is doing. When I was in Xinjiang and when I saw what the Chinese were doing to Muslims, I told them, there is no difference between the Taliban's and Al Qaeda and you, because what Taliban and Al Qaeda do to non Muslims or ISIS, they either kill them or forcefully convert them to Islam. I told them, you are exactly like them, but you are doing the opposite. You are forcefully de-Islamizing the Muslims of this province. What China is doing in Xinjiang is, apart from mass brainwashing, jailing, indoctrinating, and de-Islamizing the Muslims, on the other hand, it is mass colonizing Xinjiang with Han Chinese colonists who are brought from other regions of China in order to change the demography of this Muslim majority province. What Israel does in Palestine with its Jewish colonies, where it captures and takes Palestinian land and sends Jewish colonists, or what the Serbs tried to do in Kosovo by bringing colonists from Serbia, China is doing the same thing.
So you are saying what Taliban and Al Qaeda are doing, Chinese are doing the same thing with the Uyghur Muslims.
Yes, but the Chinese are much more aggressive,
And
powerful, and more sophisticated than the Taliban and Al Qaeda. They're much more because, I mean, Nadir, I don't know if you have ever been to China. China is a
I
total.
wish
China.
I want to go to China. I want to see Uyghur Muslims.
I don't think they'll let you after this interview with me. But I mean, China is a totalitarian state at its extreme. I mean, in India, in Albania, in Europe, we live in open and democratic societies. You have free media in your country, like we have. Of course, most of the media support the ruling party because we understand the political interest in that. But you have freedom to speak. You have
Absolutely
freedom.
right.
You have freedom to protest against your prime minister, against Modi or whatever. You have freedom to say things, but in China you don't have that. It is a totalitarian regime.
You have said, they are brainwashing the youth, Uyghur Muslims. They're imposing ideology. Now, why you say this is a systematic attack to eliminate an ethnic race from China?
It is a systematic attack because what the Chinese are doing is that they're targeting the native population of Xinjiang, which are the Muslims. The Chinese, they have a project, and this thing can be read in the government white papers. Chinese are very open. When we went to Urumqi on the 17th or 18th of August, if I'm not mistaken, we were at a five-star hotel that the Communist Party placed us in Urumqi. We were delivered a number of lectures by state officials there. And one of them was Ma Pinyan, and the other one was Shu Guidian. And in these lectures that these communist officials gave to us, it was very clear to us that Chinese government is following a systematic attack to eliminate the Muslim inhabitants of China. I cannot call it an ethnic race because when we talk about Muslims of Xinjiang, they are not one ethnicity. There are several ethnicities: Kazakhs, Kyrgyz, Uyghurs, and others. But the genocide is against the religion. These people who are Muslims, because the identity of Muslims of Xinjiang is similar to the identity of Jews. What makes somebody a Jew is not his ethnic identity, because you can be an Ashkenazi or Sephardian Jew, which you are different ethnicity. But the thing that makes you a Jew is religion, is Judaism. Or like in India, what makes you a Hindu is not if you are from Tamil Nadu or from Uttar Pradesh. You can be from different ethnicity, but the thing that unites you is Hinduism. So the same, or like in Pakistan, the same. So what makes these people one as a nation is their Islamic identity. So from the lectures that we were delivered and from the white papers, the Chinese government says very openly that Islam is a foreign religion in Xinjiang. The original religion of the Uyghurs was Buddhism. And what the Chinese government is doing is trying to revert these people back into the Confucian and Buddhist culture of China. And this thing is being done in state institutions, in schools, in museums. For example, when we were in Xinjiang, we visited three state museums: State Museum of Urumqi, of Kashgar, and of Aksu. And in these museums, the Han Chinese show the Indo-European Muslims, people like you and me who have beards, as being primitive human beings, while they show the Han Chinese as being superior, technologically advanced, and people who bring civilization to Muslims or to Indo-European people like me and you who have beards, because
Beards.
we differ from Han Chinese. They have no beards. We are different type of human species, or of human race, if I can put it in that way. So if you read their official ideology, it is like a Nazi ideology, where the Han Chinese race, their history is shown as superior, and these other people who live in China who happen not to be Han Chinese are shown being uncivilized and who have to be assimilated. In the government white papers, the Chinese government shows Xinjiang as being historically Han Chinese. I had a debate when I was there with these historians who lectured to us, because when you visit uh, state museums and you see the mummies that were discovered by the archaeologists in this area, they are all with beards. So the
Right.
official Chinese state narrative, which claims that we, the Han Chinese, have been here 3,000 years ago, is totally unscientific. The Chinese are latecomers into the Himalayas, where you have even the conflict between India and China. The Chinese have never been in Tibet, and they have never been in Himalayas. They are also latecomers in Xinjiang. Their advancement, or their imperialist advance, is a phenomena of the last 100 or 200 years. But now, with the technological superiority and money that China has, an unlimited number of colonists and soldiers, it is advancing towards this Indo-Muslim world, if we can call it like this, or Indo-Turkic world, which ranges from Nepal up to Kazakhstan and
So,
Kyrgyzstan. So we are being faced with an imperialist, very well sophisticated, racist invasion of Indian and Turkic Muslim lands.
right. No, the way you described the situation of Uyghur Muslims and how Chinese are treating them, it really hurts us. It really, really hurts us. But why there been a muted silence from the Islamic nations, especially from the Organization of Islamic Countries (OIC), who claim to be defenders of Muslims, but on the question of Uyghurs' loss of rights, freedom, and mistreatment at the hands of Chinese states, why has OIC turned a blind eye on this issue, even from historic perspective, and why there is no outrage from OIC? How should the world take this situation?
Yes, this is a question that I receive in many occasions, and I have dealt with this Uyghur issue a lot since coming from Xinjiang. And this was the question that I made to myself after witnessing what is going on there. And I asked myself why I know about Kashmir, why I know about Bosnia, why I know about Palestine, but I didn't know before about Xinjiang. The answer is very sophisticated. I mean, it's very difficult to give an answer. But number one is that China is very aggressive on defending its borders. Number two is China is very good on hiding and censoring news from what it does with its own minorities there. Number three is for historical and political reasons. There was no foreign power who had interest on Xinjiang. For example, why we in Europe know about the Kashmiri issue, but we don't know about the Uyghur issue? Because Pakistan had a political interest on Kashmir.
Hmm.
But because Pakistan never had a political interest towards Xinjiang or East Turkestan, and moreover, because Pakistan was not militarily or politically threatened by China, but instead it was corrupted by China. And
Corrupted by
China,
China.
yeah, and China is its major ally in its confrontation with India. We know and we hear about the Kashmir issue. And the other thing is that in India, you have a relatively good freedom of movement and information. We know what happens in Kashmir. We know what Modi does. You have free media. You live in open societies. And when you live in open societies, you can get the information. But what China does, it is very, very good on censoring anything
Hello.
about what. Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you. I
Yeah.
beg your pardon. Please say again.
So what I was saying is that China is very good on hiding its Muslims and the situation with its minorities because it is a totalitarian state. And on the other hand, when it comes to the Islamic countries, I just want to tell you, Nadir, this is a myth. There are no Islamic countries. Okay, we have some countries who have adopted Islam as their national identity. We have Pakistan, we have Iran, we have Turkey. But if you see these dictatorial Arabic regimes of the Gulf, like Saudi Arabia, like United Arab Emirates, these people, they hate Islam. And for example, when we were in Xinjiang and we saw that some of the prisoners that we interviewed, they were ladies who had put a hijab, and only because of the hijab, they were declared extremists and sent to concentration camps. We had two Arab journalists. One was from Saudi Arabia. Another one was from United Arab Emirates. They both had hijabs. And when they saw this, they started crying. And I told them, sisters, when you go back to Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates, are you going to write about this? They told me, no way. I told them, why? Because they told me, we are not allowed. Because we don't have democracy in many Muslim countries. We don't have open societies. And in countries like Saudi Arabia or in Egypt or in United Arab Emirates, you are not allowed to speak about this. If you speak about this, you end up in jail. Do you get my point?
Right. Oh, does members of OIC in a way act as a facilitator for the effective use of violence and cultural genocide against Uyghur Muslims in China? What's your stand on it?
Can you repeat the question again, please?
Does members of OIC in a
Mhm.
way does members of OIC in a way act as a facilitator for the effective use of violence and cultural genocide against Uyghur Muslims in China? What's your
Yes,
stand on it?
yes, yes, they do. Today, I just commented on my Twitter account
Hmm.
uh, a report that Ali Obaid Al Zaheri, who is the ambassador of the United Arab Emirates in China, he made a report about Xinjiang, praising Chinese authorities, saying things here are very good, etc., etc. And I just commented his comment, and I asked him why you don't report anything about the situation of state terror against Muslims in Xinjiang. But my rhetorical reply to him was, what can we expect from UAE, which sold Palestine to Israel? Nadir, you have to understand something. I mean, these Arab regimes, they are totalitarian, they are anti-popular, they do not want their people, they do not want Islam. They sold Palestine. I mean, they recognize the illegal Israeli occupation of Jerusalem. How do you expect these people to cry and to feel and to speak about Uyghur Muslims when they don't want their own Arab Muslims? I mean, these people,
Right.
many of these regimes, like in Bahrain, like in Saudi Arabia, like in United Arab Emirates, they are totalitarian regimes like China is. So when they look at China, when they look at Xi Jinping, they look at their brother because China offers help to any dictator in the world who wants to ally itself with China. So the Chinese go to these countries and tell them we can give you high-tech technology to monitor and control your people. We can give you money, weapons. So for these dictators to speak against China is that they do a grave for themselves. They don't care about Muslims of India. They do not care about Muslims of Xinjiang. You know how they mistreat Muslim immigrants from India when they go and work in Saudi Arabia and many of these countries. Why should they care about Uyghur Muslims?
Right now, if you look at the Islamic nations, in Pakistan and Turkey, they often speak loudly in defense of Islam and Muslims whenever they are perceived offended around the world. What made them silent on Uyghur issue?
Now we have two different situations, Turkey and Pakistan. Pakistan knows very well what China is doing with Uyghur Muslims. I've spoken
They
to,
are there alive.
yes, I've spoken to many Pakistanis, and what they tell me is that we go privately to the Chinese and tell them, please don't do this and don't do that. But publicly, they cannot do against Chinese anything because Pakistan, without the military and economic support of China, will collapse as a state. India is going to defeat it, even though Pakistan has the nuclear weapon. So, so for Pakistan, China is the shaitan that it needs in order to survive. Even though I think in the long term, Pakistan, or let me say, China is much more dangerous for Pakistan than India is. But unfortunately, neither India nor Pakistan understand this. And for some stupid reason, Pakistan goes to war with India and India with Pakistan. And who benefits out of this conflict are the Han imperialists, are the Chinese imperialism. So the situation of Pakistan is very difficult because Pakistan is in a very, very, very difficult situation, and it is a country that survives with the military and economic support of China. Now, coming back to Turkey. Turkey hosts the largest number of Uyghur refugees in the world. Turkey has spoken openly. The Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister of Turkey, they all have criticized China. But the problem with Turkey is that Turkey is too far away. It is a third world country which cannot do anything against China. But as far as I know, Turkey is the only country in the Muslim world who speaks about Uyghurs. You have so many NGOs who support the Uyghurs. The Turks know very well what is going on in China. Turkish diplomats and politicians, they have warned the Chinese and they have told them to change their behavior. But I think that in the last few months, or probably years, the Turks have understood that they cannot do anything to China. And maybe this is one of the reasons why they don't make so much noise about that.
Do political and economic factors, including concerns about losing out on Chinese investment, have kept Pakistan silent about the plight of Uyghurs? If
Yes.
so, why other countries, Muslim countries, are also silent?
Well, about Pakistan is what I already said. Pakistan needs Chinese money, needs yuan, needs Chinese technology in order to survive against India. It is real politics. And in real politics, there is no God, there is no Islam when it comes to real politics. So Pakistan follows real politics and keeps silent about its Muslim brothers and sisters who are just across the border. About the other Muslim countries, I mean, look, today, because of the history of colonialism, and because of American imperialism as well, Muslim countries are in a very difficult situation. Most Muslim countries, they are either a civil war or they are ruled by dictators. So you start from Mali to Sudan to Egypt, whatever you want. You have either dictators or you have governments who are being directed or imposed by Western imperialists, the Americans in particular. what we hear in the Muslim world and about the Uyghurs, we don't hear anything, let us say, coming from Kazakhstan or Kyrgyzstan or Uzbekistan, because in these countries you don't have democracy like we have in the West. And these countries are either puppets of Russia or the United States. But you hear about the Uyghur issue from countries, Muslim countries who have democracy. So you hear from Malaysia, you hear from Indonesia, you hear from Albania, you hear from Turkey, and you hear even from civil society organizations in Pakistan. Pakistan is in a very difficult situation, so I do not want to put it into this equation, but my conclusion would be that in those Muslim countries where you have democracy, you hear a lot about the issue of Uyghurs. But there is another problem. For example, because I have dealt with the issue of Uyghurs and Indonesia. In Indonesia, you have one of the largest Muslim political parties who made mass demonstrations against China about Uyghurs. But you know what happens whenever you speak about Uyghurs in China? The next day, you'll have the Chinese embassy will come in your office and will try to either bribe you or will invite you to go and visit Xinjiang, and they will send you to a guided tour. They'll send you to nice restaurants. They'll bring some Muslims with beers and who will read the azan for you and will give you nice food. And when you go back to Indonesia or Turkey, you'll say, look, these people who speak about discrimination, they're wrong. Things are perfect because the Chinese are masters of manipulation.
Now, you described it very well. The Pakistani's policy towards Uyghur or Erdogan's or Turkey's policy towards Uyghur Muslims. But it's a well-known fact President Erdogan is quiet, Imran Khan is quiet and blind. Why religion is now have become a personal matter and national interest the topmost priority of Pakistan and Turkey?
Uh, can you repeat me the last question, please?
I said, Erdogan is quiet.
Yeah.
President Erdogan, the president of Turkey. Imran Khan is quiet and blind on
Yes.
Uyghur Muslim issue. Why religion is now a personal matter and national interest the topmost priority of Pakistan and Turkey? Because both the nations are Muslim nations.
I'm not getting your last part of the question. Why it is becoming? Why Imran
Because
Khan?
it has become religion for them has become a personal matter.
All right, I see that.
And national interest have become the top priority of Pakistan and Turkey.
Listen, I mean, when you enter in politics, our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Further away you are from the king, closer you are to God." What does that mean? It means that when you are uh, uh, very much involved in politics, very often you are forced to have a pact with the devil, with the shaitan. So coming back to your question, why they are leaving Islam aside? Because it is national interest. Now, let me give you another example. For example, you have the conflict today between Azerbaijan and Armenia. In this conflict, Russia is also involved. In this moment that we're speaking, the Armenians, they're losing the battle. Armenians are Orthodox Christians like the Russians. But Russia is not openly intervening to support the Armenians. Why? Because it is the real politics. So even though Putin today is the champion of Christian orthodoxy in the world, when it comes to the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, he's keeping quiet and distancing himself from entering directly into this military conflict. Because what is important for state powers is what they call the national interest. So
Right.
sometimes, because of your national interest, you have to keep one eye blind. You have the example of India and Sri Lanka. The Buddhist government of Sri Lanka massacred the Hindus, the Tamil Nadus. But India didn't go to invade Sri Lanka. It is trying to repair its relation with this government who massacred the Hindus and the Tamil Nadus. This is real politics. I mean, it happens everywhere. So, I mean, I do not know if India, with the government of Modi, would have done the same thing that happened when the Sri Lankese, they defeated the Tamil Nadus. But I mean, you know, in real politics, sometimes you are forced to make a compromise with the devil.
Are you saying that these countries, particularly Pakistan and Turkey, have compromised their religious interest? They have compromised their religious interest on national interest?
Yes.
Okay.
And it has historically been so. If you know the history of the Ottoman Empire, even though the Ottoman Empire was a Muslim empire, very often it supported local Orthodox Christian lords over Muslim populations throughout Europe, because this is how real politics goes. And we see the same thing happening even in Europe, in different religious conflicts that we had in history. You would time after time see secular rulers following their national interests instead of their religious interests.
What do you think the reason for West being silent, unlike what has been their position on the question of Tibet, Taiwan, and Hong Kong?
You mean about the West, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I do not think that the West is silent. From the information that I have and from many visits that I've done
Like they
in.
have the position on Tibet, Taiwan, and Hong Kong. They don't have. They're not much articulated or speak loudly on Uyghur issues like they speak on Tibet, Taiwan, and Hong Kong.
Well, because it is taking time for Western governments to reflect. Nevertheless, West European governments, they have sent a letter to UN against China. The EU Parliament had a resolution on China. I was invited in the European Parliament to give my own testimony. You have the American government, which for political reasons, and here is where you have real politics coming into play again. You have a fundamentalist, evangelical government in the United States, led by Secretary Mike Pompeo and Mike Pence. These people, they're not secular. These people, they are priests. They're like your Hindu priests in India and are evangelical Christian priests, but they're siding with the Uyghurs. Why is Mike Pompeo and Mike Pence and Trump doing it? Because they love Muslims? No, they don't love them. Americans, they have bombed and killed Uyghur Muslims in Syria. But when it comes to the situation of Uyghur Muslims in China, they are siding with them. Of course, they're siding in the name of human rights because the Americans know perfectly well what is going on. They are very sophisticated. They know how China is trying to mass assimilate and destroy them as people.
Hmm.
But the Americans who are raising their voice and who are even supporting many Uyghur NGOs and Uyghur activists are not doing it in the name of Jesus Christ or of Allah and Muhammad. They are doing it in name of American imperialism. Because what we're witnessing today in Central Asia, we're having a big clash between the Anglo-American imperialism on one hand and the Chinese imperialism on the other hand. And I want for your viewers to understand something, that the conflict over Xinjiang is a conflict over the future of the Chinese imperialism. When I was in Xinjiang, in every state institution that we went, in every museum, the Chinese government is propagating their project of one road and one belt. What is this project of one road and one belt? It is a Chinese imperialist project. What the Anglo-Americans did with cannons and with invasions and with battles for the last 200 to 300 years on imposing the Pax Britannica on the rest of mankind, a byproduct of which is even me and you. We are speaking English to each other. We're not speaking Albanian or Hindi. So what the Anglo-Americans achieved in the last 300 years, China is trying to undo it through the One Road and One Belt project. The Chinese know very well that one day the Anglo-Americans might close the China Sea. The Anglo-Americans are doing all they can to push all the neighboring countries of China against China. India, Japan, the issue of Tibet, Taiwan, the Philippines, Malaysia, they are all siding with the United States, who at one moment they might close the sea to Chinese imperialism. But what the Chinese are doing on return is that they are destroying the Muslim population of Xinjiang. They are building this huge highway which starts from Beijing and ends up in Istanbul. They are bribing the Pakistanis and telling them, please be quiet, we will give you money, but you allow us to export our goods. And this is even the reason of the border clashes between India and China. The Chinese are advancing their imperialist advance through the Himalayas, through Central Asia, and they are trying to rebuild the Silk Road and to penetrate Europe through the roads and railways. They are not very sure that they can build their imperialism through the sea. The Chinese have not been very successful on, like the ancient Greeks were, on building colonies throughout their sea by using the sea. They are not good at sea. They are good with the roads. So coming back with a conclusion, if I may, to our discussion about the Uyghur issue, the Uyghur issue or the issue of Muslims of Xinjiang is at the heart of a big clash of two imperialisms, the Anglo-American imperialism on one hand and the Chinese imperialism on the other. And here we have second-hand players like India, like Pakistan, like Taiwan, like Japan, who are everyone being used in this major battle between the Anglo-American imperialism and the Chinese imperialism. And this is the reason why we have the fundamentalist anti-Muslim American administration who talks and speaks and cries about the Muslims of Xinjiang. It is not because Trump loves and the believers of Allah and Muhammad. It is real politics.
What role do you think the West would like India to play? What do you think India has to play on the issue?
The Americans would like to see India go to war with China. They are doing their best to push the Indians to stand up to the Chinese, like they're doing the same with the Taiwanese, with the Japanese, with the Philippines and others. Now, what India should do, in my opinion, India should do something, should play smart. India should be like China. It should make peace with Pakistan. It should reach an agreement over the issue of Kashmir with Pakistan. Because after all, you, the Indians and Pakistanis, you are the same people. The only difference is that some are Muslims and some are Hindus. You are, I mean, you come from the same origin. So, and moreover, you are Indo-Europeans and you are different from the Chinese in every aspect. A Hindu can understand a Muslim and a Muslim can understand a Hindu much better than they can understand the Han Chinese. You eat the same kind of food and tradition and culture. So in my opinion, India should be smart, should approach Pakistan and make peace with Pakistan. And they should look in their longue durée approach about what will happen with the Indian subcontinent in the coming 50 years. Because there is something that China is a very aggressive superpower. China can militarily and economically defeat all its neighbors, including India. But the greatest threat that China brings to the Indian continent is the economic enslavement. So, in my opinion, India and Pakistan, instead of spending their money on fighting each other, they should build economic bridges. I mean, Pakistan and India, they have historically been together. They should come again together today, because if the Chinese imperialism captures Pakistan and India one day, there will be no Muslims and Hindus anymore. The Chinese will send you all to concentration camps, and they will forcefully force you to speak Chinese.
Now, as you said, earlier, that Pakistan has compromised. They talk about national interest. When they have compromised, how there can be a consensus or a peace between India and Pakistan when Pakistan stands with China?
Look, Pakistanis follow real politics. They are really afraid of India. India is a superpower in your region, so they need to ally with someone. But I think, and I've seen even Prime Minister Imran Khan, very often they offer the olive branch to Indians, and they call for peace and understanding. I think that if the Modi government will, in a way, moderate itself somehow, like you had the Congress government before it, the chances are very high with Imran Khan to reach a very good understanding. I mean, for me, looking at your conflict from Europe, it really makes no sense. I mean, you are the same people. You need to build bridges. You need to learn from the French and German peace after Second World War, which led to the creation of the European Union. And you should do the same in India and in Pakistan. Pakistan should end its sponsorship, like it has already ended, for these militant groups who come and do terrorist acts in India. And on the other hand, India should also show a more brotherly face to Pakistan. You should open the roads, the railways. You should stop killing each other. I mean, you're killing each other for nothing. When I see your border conflicts, it's really stupid, at least for us in Europe who observe it. You should come to peace with each other, because like the Bible says, the peacemakers, they're blessed. I mean, there is nothing better than having peace. Your conflict of partition of India and Pakistan now is getting so old. People have forgotten what happened to you. You should come back to a real understanding, and it will be beneficial for both countries. I mean.
Do you believe that what's happening today in Uyghur Muslims in future, if Pakistan and China have the friendship, and tomorrow China will make concentration camps in Pakistan, in same destiny will be with the Pakistanis?
Believe me, if the Chinese will one day manage and be so powerful to annex Pakistan or even parts of India, they will do the same thing. They are very intolerant. They do not tolerate religion. They do not tolerate other cultures. They want to assimilate. And moreover, there is something that the Chinese, they are economically, militarily, but even work-like superior to us. The Chinese work a lot. We Indo-Europeans, we do not work as hard as the Chinese do. President Trump is wrong for many things, but I think for something, he have really understood the threat that China brings to Western civilization. I mean, we cannot stand to the Chinese. And they're totalitarian. This is the main problem. They're not like us.
Do you believe that this the Chinese program of one road and one belt project, it goes through Pakistan? Do you think or believe that one day they will occupy Pakistan?
Allah knows the best, but we know from the history of the British imperialism, the British did not invade India immediately. First was East India Company. So imperialism usually comes with a trade. So first you have the traders who come and want just to do trade, and later come the soldiers who will defend the traders, and later on you'll have these soldiers who are going to topple your government. This is how imperialism works. Today is one road and one belt and good Chinese goods. When the British came to India, the Mughals of the time, they were very happy because they were getting money from the British.
East
They
India Company.
Yes, they corrupted the Mughal leaders. They'll give. I've seen that in Malaysia as well. They corrupted the local sultans. They were giving them money. They're telling them, no problem, we'll bring some slaves from China to work in the mines, but we'll give you a free road. You can be a sultan, no problem. But what happens after sometimes, the traders, they become military superior, and they topple the leaders. So, I mean, in a long term, the Chinese imperialism is very dangerous, like the Anglo-American imperialism is as well.
So in other way, I can say right now Chinese are corrupting Pakistani politicians.
Not only, I mean, the Chinese are corrupting everybody, even here in Albania, where I am, in Italy, in Greece, throughout Europe. Chinese have plenty of dollars. They are buying everything. They are buying ports, airports, everything. They go into very strategic infrastructure points, and they start slowly but surely, and then they colonize. Listen, something that I told to our Chinese friends when I was in China, I told them that because I was shocked to see the high level of capitalism and, of course, the racist ideology which the Chinese state is built upon, where they show the Han Chinese as superior and the Muslims as inferior. I told them, I thought that you are a socialist country. And in a socialist country, proletarians have no nation. I mean, they are all equal. But the Chinese are not. They are not socialists. They are imperialists. And this is what we have to understand.
Last question to you, doctor. What's your message or you would like to suggest to Muslim countries to highlight the issue of Uyghur Muslims?
Well, if there were Muslim countries, I would have appealed to them to have some on these poor Muslims, and to tell to the Chinese. I've already told to the Chinese this, to open up Xinjiang, to allow Uyghurs to practice their religion, to travel overseas, to make Hajj, to connect their families, and to stop the aggressive colonization of Xinjiang by the Han Chinese. I've told to our Chinese friends in many occasions, I mean, Xinjiang or East Turkestan is your province. You have militarily occupied it in 1948. That is a fact, and the Muslim world cannot undo it. Like Pakistan cannot undo the Indian annexation of Kashmir. It is a fact. We have to accept the international system as it is. But minimum that China has to do with the Uyghur Muslims, that the Muslim Ummah should ask, is to tell to the Chinese, please open up Xinjiang, give passports to Uyghurs, remove your Han colonies, stop your discrimination policies against Muslims and Uyghurs, allow Uyghurs to go back to mosques, to practice their religion, to open madrasas, and to live in their natural way of life. I mean, China can do this, but for some reasons, they are very stubborn and they do not want to undo it. But this is the minimum that the Muslim world can ask from China. And if there is a real pressure, I think that the Chinese are going to reflect on it. I hope and pray that the Chinese change their minds. Like, I hope and pray at the same time that Indians and Pakistanis change their minds as well and come into peace. We don't need wars. We do not need to discriminate each other because of our religion or whatever. Let's live in peace. But that is very difficult, isn't it?
Yeah. Let's hope for the peace. Let's hope for the best.
All
Let's
right.
see Uyghur as uh, a peaceful and real Muslim majority state.
And by the way, since you are in India, I would have suggested to the Indian government to take some Uyghur refugees and to host them in India, like it does with Tibetans and Dalai
Afghanis.
and Afghans and others. I mean, Uyghur Muslims, they are peaceful, and uh, by doing this, India is going to win many hearts and minds of Muslims throughout the world. I mean, for some people, this might look a bit strange because some people say, look, this Indian government is a fascist, they are against Muslims. But, you know, people change, politics can change. So it will be a great PR campaign for the Indian government if they will give an open arm to our Uyghur Muslim brothers and sisters. And India will show to the world that it cares about Muslims, you know?
Absolute a good suggestion you have made for government of India.
Yeah.
And as I earlier said, you're an epitome of knowledge. One can learn a lot from you. It was really a pleasure. It was actually a brainstorming session.
Yes.
And thanks for giving me time. And I hope we will be in touch. And inshallah, we can do more video sessions so that people of Uyghur will have hope on us, and we will speak on behalf of them, and we raise the issues. Thanks a lot, Dr. Osley. It was a real play. It was a really great pleasure.
Thank
Thanks
you
a
very much.
lot. Thanks for giving me your time.
All right. Salam alaikum.
Thank you.